All right, hello, welcome back. Preds Power Hour here on a Friday afternoon, week away in the mountains. I survived. No black bear appearances, some fish, did some lakes, did some horseback riding, which let me tell you folks, if you're not stretching before you go on a horseback for a 2-hour experience, that's a mistake when you're in your 30s, because let me tell you folks, the lower back and my legs are just still not in great shape. Let me just say, I'm still kind of reeling from that experience, because you're bouncing around a lot, and you're working out muscles and things that you're not doing on the daily. But it's a fun time if you're able to do it, because it's just different. It's something I cannot explain other than just you got to try it for yourself and experience that. But also go touch some grass, folks. The world's bad. Go touch some grass, because you will feel better about the state of things, because it's always just chaos each and every day. Touch some grass, ride some horses, fish, go breathe, go take a walk. And that's my my unsolicited advice here in these crazy times. Also here on the Forecheck's news site, I don't even know how I can do this, really. I mean, on the forecheck.com right now, is it going to be a redirect for the news site?
It will be. We're waiting on them to turn over they gave us a deadline to get it done, and they aren't done with it, so we're sitting here ready. So, but yeah, hopefully Bryan, maybe by the time this comes out, things will be fine. But otherwise, you'll hear plenty. But no, I'm good. It's been kind of an insane couple of weeks. Had a great time at the Renegades, the shindig down last Friday. That was a blast. And so yeah, it's been crazy. The weather has fluctuated between like 15 and 80 like 2 times this week, which is just real great on my sinuses. Just absolutely destroyed. But you know, I've come to terms with that.
There you go. Also here, Jeff Middleton of, let me check my notes here, everywhere on the internet. Jeff, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired, and as Bryan said, the weather up here has been a little bit up and down. I think it's raining today, and yesterday it was like gorgeous and like 55 degrees. It was like perfect.
How far is Miami of Ohio from Nashville?
It is about 5 hours on a good day without a stop. So I can make it in 5 hours and 10 minutes.
Wow, it's like going to Memphis from here.
Yeah. Wait, is it 5 hours from Nashville to Memphis?
I'm trying to think. Yeah,
it's like 6 from here to Memphis from Knoxville.
Is it really only 6? Yeah, maybe it's 4 then. It's been a minute.
Been to Memphis once, so I couldn't tell you, and I didn't drive.
There you go. Well, how was Renegades a Puck? Good turnout, good environment. What was your favorite thing about Friday night?
Jeff, do you want to say it?
I mean, I love being up on stage. That was a good time. It was. I thought, like, you know, I came in with high expectations, but also, like, you know, I didn't want to get like too, like, you know, everybody's gonna be here, they're all gonna love everything that we're doing and stuff like that. But honestly, like, it was really great. Like the turnout, the people that were there, they were all great. They all were chatting with each other. Like, you know, Willie Donick showed up, Crazy Kyle showed up, like everybody. There were people from all sorts of different areas of the Preds universe, media, broadcasters, fans. Like it was awesome, and everybody had a good time. You know, and then Bryan, Sean, and Charlie and I, and we went on stage and we did a little thing and talked a little bit in front of people, and it was fun. And Charlie gave me a very, very big, oh yeah, there's a picture. Yeah, Charlie gave me a very big and very unnecessary introduction, but he's awesome for it. He did such a good job. Like I'm really proud of the job he did. It was such a great event.
Yeah, it was a blast. Bryan? Yeah, it was a blast. I mean, this with, getting Jeff his jersey, which is maybe the very first time I've been able to make Charlie not spend his own money on people. So that was good, and it's fine. We put in a bulk order because we had like 4 more ideas for things. So, we got.
He said he was going to get me one that was actually like mine. So
yeah, don't names in the back. I've only seen the front. Are there names in the back? Okay,
all 3 of mine, my home, away, and throwbacks, the yellow ones. Yeah, so it was really good. Met a lot of really cool people. Got to put a lot of like faces to names, which was nice. We had some people, some of our other writers come by. Sean was there with his wife Keegan. We got to meet, a ton of people. People that had written for On the Forecheck years and years ago. So it was cool to see that. But I mean, other than outside of hockey stuff, just there were a lot of cool people there at the shindig, and it was great to meet all of them. I even had one person come up and buy me a drink that night, so that was pretty fun.
There you go. Jeff knows something. Jeff,
I know something.
There you go. Well, we'll talk about that off air potentially. Brian,
it's nothing bad.
Nothing bad. Okay, good.
Nothing bad.
The last 2 weeks, Preds are 3-4-1. Still very much in the thick of the playoff chase, injuries notwithstanding, which we'll get to in a second here. But you had some blowout losses to the Rangers and the Kraken. You had some big wins against some good teams in Buffalo, Seattle, and Boston. You had some close games, Toronto and Pittsburgh last night. What do you make of this stretch, Brian? And what have you learned, or what has changed in the way you've seen the Preds versus our last program 2 weeks ago?
I'm going to save the most obvious answer for a little bit later, because that's going to be a big topic. But I think a lot of it, to me, watching this, because I mean, I wouldn't have, these games against Seattle were supposed to be the start of that final 13 game stretch where they were just, their strength of schedule, I think, was second in the NHL as far as, opponent record. And so there wasn't a huge amount of expectations, but the team showed that like they've got a spark. Like they can win games. They can steal games, probably is the better way to do it, to say it, just because, they have to get a pretty decent start. And, they're going to struggle heading down the stretch. Like we saw it last night against Pittsburgh, where they kind of shut themselves down in the second period and never recovered. And we've seen that before. And so really it just relies on them being able to play with that level of intensity. And it's, the roster is completely decimated and full of, guys who haven't played that many games together. When the most like veteran person on the team who's been with the team the longest is Colton Sissons, it's you're a little bit in dire straits, but they keep winning. I mean, they've in the last 8 games, they've got 7 points in the last 8 games. So I mean, a little under 500, but still not bad, especially considering they just beat the Boston Bruins, because the Bruins would have clinched the President's Trophy if they had beaten Nashville, and they didn't, so they had to wait another night. So it's kind of Jekyll and Hyde, but it really, I mean, if we're being honest, it's kind of all been riding on Juuse Saros too.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, that Toronto game was fun. Like I thought, I went with my dad, and it was a great time. Like, everybody, Toronto Maple Leafs fans are well known around the NHL as some of the more boisterous, and that game was that game was close pretty much. Like I thought, like throughout the game, like I thought, I think the second period was their worst period, but after that, like the first and third, I thought they kept it, pretty tight. And the final kind of 5 minutes of it they were so fun. Like it was, Tyson Barrie decided to carry the team on his back. He just turned on that extra gear, and he was creating so much offense, and they were getting chances. And, even though they lost, I take losses like that. Like that's kind of where I'm at this point. Like, I go back to the Ottawa Senators of a couple years ago, even this year. Their losses, but they're usually fun. Like they're in the games, and that's kind of the point. Like, and the Preds aren't all there yet. Like they got killed by the Kraken. That was ugly. They got killed by the Rangers. That was uglier. Last night against the Penguins, they gave up over 6 expected goals. That's ugly. Shout out to Juuse Saros for having I think you tweeted it, Brian. It was like over 3 or 4 goals saved above expected, and he only gave up 2 goals. Like they lost. But yeah, I think they still have a lot to work on, but I also think the expectations are on the ground right now. So it's, I mean, they, they have this last stretch of games that's against the same kind of opponents that they were going to be playing. Yeah. Or that they were playing before. And, even though the Bruins, they beat the Bruins, I don't think that's something that's going to happen a lot down this last stretch. The Bruins got taken to overtime by Columbus last night. So I don't know if they're all there either. They're trying to avoid the President's Trophy, even though that's pretty much inevitable at this point. But yeah, I mean, they're gonna have a hard time, and that's that's okay. That's how it is. They're an AHL team right now. Like that's how it is.
Well, when you look at the rest of the schedule, Bryan, what does your gut say? Do you think they stick with around 500? Do you think that there is a possibility they go on a run? Like, what is your forecast for these final few games in the Preds regular season?
Yeah, I mean, so if they're going to, they've stayed in the kind of the playoff race just by virtue of Winnipeg and Calgary refusing to take it either. But I mean, they've got it's going to be a little bit tough, and they're going to have to go through these teams that they want to make the playoffs. If they're going to prove it, they're going to prove it against the teams that they're going to see and they're competing against. So I mean, I think St. Louis is tomorrow or today, I guess, if you're listening to this, which should be kind of the easiest game they've got left. So after that, it's at Dallas, and then the very next day, back to back Vegas at home, which if Nashville was to get the 8th wild card spot, they would be playing the Vegas Golden Knights. So that's going to be, a big one. Then at home again on Thursday, Carolina, at Winnipeg, at Calgary. So, I mean, those two games just that's everything. Those are 4-point swings, and Nashville has a game in hand on both of those. So I think the last time I looked, I think it technically Nashville controls their playoff destiny as long as they win all 8 games that are left. So, I mean, they've got that. They've got Minnesota back-to-back with Minnesota and Colorado to end the season. So it's going to be rough, I would say. And again, I've been wrong on this fairly recently, actually. So 8 games, I'm going to say that they go, I'm trying to be generous, but I really think it's going to be like 2-5-1 just because the schedule's really tough. I think that maybe they can Minnesota struggled a little bit. I don't know if they're going to be able to catch Dallas, not playing well because they're still trying to get seeding. I like their chances against Calgary, oddly enough. And then Winnipeg, those games are always really fun. And so, I don't know, but I think if they get 5 points out of those 16, which again, Bar is on the ground right now, that's pretty good. I think that's showing that they can still compete against these bigger teams, but I think just their inexperience and the lack of talent really just is the thing that's going to sink them, whether they like it or not.
Injuries are piling up. Matt Duchene now injured here. Jeff, what does that mean for the Preds and what the lines are going to look like down the stretch here?
Well, first of all, hoping Matt Duchene has a safe, healthy recovery, because I was at the game where he injured his hand and it did not look good. Of course, I was in the 300, so I couldn't see all of it. But when, a guy gets hit in the hand with the puck and he shakes his glove off and then he extends his arm all the way out with his hand bent, that's never a good idea, never a good thing to happen. And one of my brother's hockey teammates had an injury happen where he skated off the ice like that, just perfectly the same, and he had his hand was broken. So, John Hines will call it week to week, but he's not coming back, or at least he shouldn't. But yeah, I mean, it means a top 6 spot for another guy. We saw our boy Igor get a top 6 spot against the Bruins, and even though he hasn't scored a point yet, he's come close. But he has looked good. Like I thought he's played pretty well. He's done everything that a fourth liner needs to do. And this time he gets to do it with more skilled teammates. So I don't know. I think it's just more opportunity. Like this team is full of young guys that have no NHL experience, and some guys it might be their only NHL experience. Like they might be not backup ever in their career. So you're going to have guys trying to take advantage of it, and another injury to another guy that's been kind of leading the charge as a veteran will give them a promotion. And whether or not we see a difference in the Preds outcomes because of it is one thing, but it does mean that these young guys are getting experience, and that's what it's all about.
Bryan, when you look at just what the roster looked like before the year and now looking at it down the stretch here in terms of injury, just how stark of a contrast is it, and how much of this did you just not foresee for this group? Oh, Bryan, you're muted. Still muted. There he is.
There we go. Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to look at the stat like the points and goals leaders, if you take out everybody who's injured or traded away or anything like that, your leaders for goals for the Predators are Tommy Novak with 14, Cody Glass with 12, and Colton Sissons with 11. And it's it's this almost exactly the same lineup for points. Yeah, exactly the same. Tommy Novak 34 points in 43 games, which Tommy Novak's been incredible. I'm really glad that he's up and he's staying in the NHL. I mean, yes, they may not have a choice but to keep him at this point, but it's good to see him there. Colton Sissons, I don't know. It's good for him. I'm glad. But it's not, you don't want to see your third leading scorer to be Colton Sissons. That's not, things aren't going quite well if that's what's going on. So, but even more of a difference, and like the game against Bastin actually marked like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a milestone, I guess, for Nashville. And I'll show you what I've, because it's probably easier to do this. I'll describe it for those of you who are just listening. But so this is the total team, the goals above replacement, which is, Evolving Wild, their metric kind of measures the individual impact of players. So taking every player that was active for each of those games and, just adding those numbers all together, you can see it peaked up at like above 30. And now with the Bastin game, the team's like total goals above replacement, not including Juuse Saros, is a -3 now. So, they are, I mean, the kind of the definition, the working definition is like above replacement. Replacement is just basically like your 13th forward or your 7th defenseman. It's basically an AHL player that you just call up to fill a spot when there's like an injury. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Is it's an AHL team. They're a good AHL team. And Milwaukee, when Nashville's done with these guys, Milwaukee is going to look really good coming into the playoffs. But it's such a stark difference from the start of the year. I mean, you lose the best three players, Josi, Forsberg, Duchene, like they make up for 24 goals above replacement by themselves. They did get a little bit of help in the fact that moving a guy like Mikael Granlund, who had, I think, the bottom 10% of the entire NHL, I think he was like a -8 or -9 by himself. That helped because that did push their numbers back up after the deadline, after moving, Tanner Jeannot also, his goals above replacement were in the -2. So it's just been a massive difference. But at the same time, it's been super fun to watch. And until Duchene got hurt, he actually seemed to be really enjoying kind of taking that leadership role. And, I didn't see any issue in the last, 2 weeks of him, taking shifts off or not, pushing as hard. I mean, he was out there, he's in their morning skates, like really pushing the guys and really, enjoying himself. So, it was good to see things like that. But, now it's the young guys or the youth or the, longtime AHLers. That's their time. Cause again, this is a longer preseason for them than they normally would get. So they're trying to do everything they possibly can to impress, whoever is going to be in charge of things.
Man, that's what a year. This has just been one of the weirder, like I'm new to all this, and you just don't see this across the board. Injuries, roster blow up, coaching changes, like you just look across the board, front office, like ownership, like there's just questions all abound. And I think if you ask any Preds fan, writer, analyst, player, whoever, like what this team's going to look like 2 years from now, you're going to get a bunch of different answers. I don't think anything's really all that clear.
It's been a blast. I mean, granted, like my 3.5 years of, being credentialed and being at games and things like that, where, there was a year with COVID, where we were the only people in the building besides the players. And then there was kind of that slow march back in between. And then this year has been insane. I mean, when I started, about a year into when I started with On the Forecheck, that's when like it all happened with Peter Laviolette getting fired, PK Subban being traded, just all those kinds of things. So it, I personally, as was covering the team, I don't know what a normal year looks like, but this one's been a lot more fun just because, again, we're not going into this being like, yes, playoff push, they can do this, they're close, they can finish this off. It's kind of like, hey, if they make the playoffs, that'd be pretty cool. But if they don't, that's also pretty cool. But yeah, it's been crazy to watch. But I feel for the players, I think, the most, because they're just having to deal with a lot of stuff that's out of their control. And so that's been, I can understand. I can kind of be like, yeah, these guys are probably tired of talking about what's it like being in the NHL now, things like that. But as a fan, it's been an absolute blast.
There you go. Speaking of blasts, Juuse Saros being the best goaltender in the NHL in goals above replacement. Jeff, when you look at the season that Juuse's had, and looking around the landscape of NHL and just the current crop of elite goalies, what separates Juuse, and is there still a few goalies that you would take over him at this present time?
I think he's an anomaly, which is really fun.
How so?
Well, he's smaller.
He's so short.
Yeah, like he's like, you just don't see guys his height be this good. Like there are guys that have been serviceable at his height, but he is an elite goaltender. I think this season has been weird because I think the Preds defense has been so awful.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's been so bad night in and night out. And that has cost him a lot. Like you look at, everybody loves to talk about Linus Ullmark. He's backstopping this historic team and like one of the best teams in NHL history to a President's Trophy. And his save percentage is over .930 and all this other stuff. But he's behind Juuse Saros in goals saved above expected by like 3, like over 3. And I looked the other day and it was obviously a team like the Bruins is not going to give up many high danger chances, and they don't. He faces I think the last I checked, it was like, the 20th most high danger chances among starters. Like he's not facing a ton of dangerous shots. Now I do think that Saros's competition for a Vezina trophy would be Ilya Sorokin, who is playing absurd hockey right now. I think he's like 7 goals saved above expected over Juuse Saros right now. And that's just crazy. But granted, Juuse Saros has faced, I think, like 15 more expected goals against in total, which is like a pretty big margin when it comes to defense. So yeah, I think part of the Juuse Saros narrative that a lot of people, and it's been happening over these last few years, is like, the Preds defense has never been good enough to make him look good in the win department, which is where GMs care about Vezina voting and stuff like that. His wins and his save percentage have always been lower, but it's not to the fault of his own. It's not because he hasn't been making these big saves. It's because the defense in front of him has given up so many that he just can't do. He can't do everything. And he's unbelievably talented. He's so fun to watch, and it's super unfortunate because I don't know if he will ever win a Vezina, and it's not because he's not the best goalie in the world. It's because the defense in front of him gives up so much that he is at the breaking point where he just can't do everything in humanly like he's reached his limit. His defense gave up 6 expected goals last night. Like that's I don't understand how you see that and are like, look at the numbers and see he has like over 4 goals saved above expected and think this guy's not the best goalie in the world. Like, all respect to Ilya Sorokin and Linus Ullmark and anybody else, but I am of the opinion that Juuse Saros is a top 2 goalie in the world at the very least. And like, over a 3-year span, it's pretty easy to argue that he is the best goalie in the NHL. And if he's not the best performance-wise, he's easily the most athletic, one of the most athletic goaltenders I've ever had the privilege of watching. So, yeah, if you don't think Juuse Saros is the best goalie in the world, watch him a little more. Well, you could do that, or you could watch him a little more. And I guarantee you that you will see why Preds fans are so adamant that he deserves to win a Vezina, because the goals he gives up are rarely, and I mean rarely, on him. Like, I think I remember 2 or 3 instances this year where I was like, he's going to want that one back. But other than that, man, like, he can't do anything about great passes through the seam and then a one-timer. And sometimes he does. Like it's the things, he's so athletic that he can get to those pucks. But, man, people got to watch him more. I don't know what it is, but people do have to watch him more, because they will understand that what goals saved above expected says is right, because he's the only thing keeping the Predators even remotely close to this playoff race at this point.
I like it. Brian, any final things on Juuse Saros as we wrap up here with the Preds playoff push here?
Yeah, like Jeff said, I think the biggest thing, and again, Ullmark, if they said that they're going to award it to the guy who scored a goalie goal, then I'd be like, yeah. And he's got a resume that is very impressive too. I mean, it's kind of it's a very close race, and I think that part of the not having as many wins, only having 1 shutout on the season, that's the type of thing that the voters pay attention to on a lot of this stuff. But if you compare like the defenses that are in front of them, I mean, Sorokin and Saros are facing just awful defenses in front of them, while Ullmark, he's got one of the best teams in regular season history, in front of him. And so that's the separator for me. And then 2, it's, Juuse Saros is by far the best penalty killing goaltender in the league by like a rather large margin. I think the next highest, he's got a 13, and the next highest I think is like a 0.68 or 6.8. So, I mean, almost doubling the next guy. I mean, that's how, and it's been pretty bad. They've improved a lot towards the season. But I do feel better about the fact that the one guarantee I made in the preseason was that Juuse Saros will 100% finish the season as a Vezina finalist. So I still feel pretty good about that. I can accept a lot of the other arguments, and I can accept if he doesn't win the award this year, but he's got to
win it sometime.
Yeah. I mean, I know that like every time they do like those player polls or like the media or coaches, it's like they always want to put Vasilevsky up there. They want to put up, they pick someone who's like 20th on the
Connor
list.
Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck, he's always up there.
Yeah, he's been pretty good too. I mean, but you look at the thing, look at like Philip Gustafson, like with Minnesota, like that's been a cool story to watch. I mean, just a guy that kind of come out of nowhere, Edinger, like those types of guys. But it's just it's a 3-man race at this point, in my opinion. And if anybody, like Juuse Saros has as good a claim as anybody, and I wouldn't bet against him, to be honest.
I just want to put out there that I have it pulled up. So Juuse is first in the league in expected goals against by 5. The next highest is John Gibson, but he's also played 7 fewer games. So he would probably I'm going to assume he would take the lead on that if he played the same amount of games.
He also deserves his own award every year. Like there needs to be the John Gibson Memorial, sir. Like he's not dead, but he is out there and on he's
stuck in Anaheim.
Yeah.
But so Sorokin is 4th in expected goals against at 175. Juuse's at 199. And Linus Ullmark is 22nd at 120.73. So there's a margin of 79 expected goals against for Juuse and 79 for, wow, I can't even believe that, 179 expected goals against for UC, and then a 55 expected goals against margin from Sorokin.
Yeah,
so that's pretty telling.
Yeah, I think if you look at like just at even strength, like the shot attempts that they faced, Juuse Saros is second in the league with the second most in the league. With Sorokin is fourth, Ullmark 18th.
Yeah.
For penalty killing, same thing. Second for Juuse Saros with most attempts, 11th for Sorokin, and 18th again for Ullmark. So, I mean, he's making, and this is again, he's played in 58 games. I mean, he's played in, almost as, I think he's what, like maybe fourth or fifth and for most games played, I think so far. But so, I mean, there's a very strong argument, and I feel like there's about as strong of an argument for Juuse Saros as there was the year Pecorine won the Vezina as well. I think if they squeak into the playoffs, I think that'll do a lot to change voters' mind. Not that it should, but the narrative that Saros carried,
it's always like that. So
he's the magic school bus that carried all these kids, into the playoffs somehow. Would be a good boon for his chances. But man, he's having such a special year.
Man. Well, there you go. What do you think ultimately happens? What's y'all's prediction finally? Do you think he wins or no?
Jeff?
I don't think I've kind of made my rounds on some podcasts here and there. Not myself, but I just listened to some stuff. And it's all Linus Ullmark. Like, I just don't think that goals saved above expected is as mainstream as it needs to be, to the point where we can start having that kind of conversation about Juuse Saros. It's getting up there, and I'm super happy about it because it's way better than any other stat that we have currently, even though of course it has its flaws. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's not mainstream enough to where the narrative surrounding Linus Ullmark, created by a mix of coaches and fans and even the GMs who vote on this stuff. I don't think, or did the GMs vote on Vezina? Am I mistaken?
That's a good question. I think it's one of the ones that
I said that, but I don't know if I'm 100% correct.
Gosh, I can't believe I don't know this off the top of my head. I'll get back to you.
Okay. But whoever votes,
GMs, you're right.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. But the GMs also, they know what goes on and they hear what happens. But the way it's been, and it's the same with the Norris Trophy most of the time, like you're not going to change the GM's mindset from wins and save percentage to goals saved above expected just like that. Like it's not just gonna happen. And so while I am glad that goals saved above expected is a stat that's becoming more mainstream, it's also not to the point where that's being used as the main tool for goalie evaluation. And that's where the problem comes in for voting on an award. So unfortunately, I don't think he's going to win, but it's not because he didn't deserve it. It's because the way the voting is now, he gets kind of screwed.
Or maybe it's because you don't believe in him, Jeff. I'm going to disagree, but again, and you like all your points, I 100% agree with. And like the pessimist in me is like, yeah, that's kind of, and that's fair. Like I said earlier, it's fair, but no, I disagree. And here's why. I think we've known how good Saros has been all season. Like it's been fairly obvious to us. But the trend over the last about 2.5 weeks has been Nashville goes and plays a team that is trying to actively get a playoff spot. And then whether Nashville wins or loses, there's a bunch of those fans being like, holy crap, Juuse Saros is good. I saw like even with the Rangers loss, like they were just like, this doesn't seem right for him. Buffalo fans, like they wanted him badly at the deadline. I told them no, specifically not. Like he kept them in it with Seattle. He's the reason they beat Boston. And Chicago fans, Red Wings fans, these are all like fan bases that don't see a lot of the Preds. And now they're all having to pay attention because these games are getting more important, you know. And then you've got teams like, you know, you've got Dallas, you got Vegas, Carolina. Like they're making kind of the tour. And so, you know, Juuse Saros, this is his time. I think that he's probably going to start out of these next 8 games. I bet you he starts, gosh, probably 6 out of 8. You know, he'll probably
I was going to say 6 or 7.
Because I mean, I don't see them not using him. You know, those 2 back-to-backs would be hard.
Yeah, I could see one of those 2 back-to-backs. He plays both games.
And he's sitting at what, like 50 games? Yeah, Jesus. So, yeah.
So much for not running him into the ground.
Yeah, but I mean, we can even look back at some like counting stats and just see like what he's done. Like looking back and like for the Predators going all the way back to, what is that, 2007? He had nobody. This season he's the team has given up 2.3 goals against, which is actually the fifth most in franchise since that time. But then the amount of expected goals allowed in 2018, 2019, they gave up 2.4 per 60 minutes. For first place this year, Saros, the Predators are giving up 2.9. So I mean, to be 5th in the most like goals allowed, but be by a wide margin, like the most expected goals, like in the last, almost like 15, 16 years. Those are things that you can make that campaign for. You can say, look at what he's facing. I mean, nobody, you know, when you looked at the game score like card yesterday for last night's game, the top of the list with like the best game score was Juuse Saros. Then it was every single one of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then it was the rest of the Predators. And that's pretty much how it's been. And he's getting in front of these big market teams and these games that are getting really, really important for a lot of teams. Because even if the team, you know, even if the game isn't super important for Nashville or they get out of it, like they're still going to be important for those teams. And I don't think anybody's going to be resting their starters for a majority of these games. So here's his chance. If he's going to do it, he needs to have more performances like he's had this week. But I don't doubt him at all with that, except for against Colorado, maybe. I'm still not convinced that they're not going to run through the playoffs again.
They're good, man. They're so
speaking of the playoffs, as we wrap up here on this Friday edition of the Preds Power Hour, 13% chance of making the playoffs for the Preds. 3 points out of the wild card spot. Calgary right there, Winnipeg right there. You mentioned at the top, Bryan, that if they win out, they control their own destiny. All they have to do is win out and they control it. Obviously some big games, specifically Winnipeg versus Detroit, Vancouver versus Calgary, and then obviously the St. Louis situation, which I don't think Bryan likes St. Louis at all. I think you're a pretty anti-Blues guy. You're not a Bennington guy, I know that, but it feels like out of every team that we've talked about on this podcast, it feels like you have the strongest disdain towards the Blues, Bryan. But with all that being said, what does this feel like to you down the stretch here? Are the Preds going to make the playoffs? And 2, should fans want the Preds to make the playoffs down the stretch here?
Yeah, so I'm changing my answer on that last question because what we've said all season, that, yeah, let hope for it. It's fun. It'll be cool to see these guys get that experience. And then, again, with the expectations being so low on the ground, let's see what happened. I mean, honestly, if you think back, when was the last time this roster looked anything like this? And Jeff, I know if you're not rolling your eyes, I'm going to roll your eyes for you. I mean, the last time the roster was this decimated with a goalie playing out of his mind to end the season, we saw what happened, but that's not going to happen. But, you know, goaltending is so important in the playoffs. I mean, probably the most important thing. And so it'll be fun. If they don't make it, cool. I think I would like to be done because I wanted to take a trip when the first week of the playoffs is going to start. So, but that's me being selfish. You know, that I still wouldn't do that, but I just don't see where they can do this to make the playoffs. I really, there's so much there. I mean, by the time they get to those games against Calgary and Winnipeg, you know, that's after playing. They still have to do St. Louis, then at Dallas, and then the next day, Vegas, and then Carolina. You know, are they going to be able to keep pace with Winnipeg and Calgary like they have been? Now, granted, keeping pace is not the right word. The Jets and the Flames have all decided to tread water anytime Nashville loses a game. They're just like, yeah, we'll drop one too. Just so it's right there, because I'm sure that the org would be thrilled to kind of just be like, all right, we're done we're done with this push. Like, we're out of it. Let's get done with it. But I don't know. I just don't see it happening. It'll be great if it does, but they just don't have it with Duchene out. A lot of these young guys have burnt their year of their ELC. You know, I think Igor's past that now. Evangelista's past that now. 9 games and that's a year of NHL contracts. So they kept them there mostly because they were forced to, but they're going to push for it, and it'll be cool to see. I think if you want to be excited about playoffs, then start watching the Milwaukee Admirals, which by the time you guys hear this, all they got to do is take 1 point today, and they'll clinch the playoffs, and I'll win my hat bet with Sarah, who covers the Chicago Wolves. And so she will be a proud new owner of that Milwaukee Admirals hat right there. So that's going to be fun. Askarov.
It's a great logo.
Yeah, it really is. And, speaking of goaltenders too, with Askarov, he's having one hell of a year.
You can't do this, Bryan. You're just going to I just don't, Jeff, we cannot allow this to happen for Bryan, because if UC is playing at this level and then he's still all in on Askarov, something's got to give, and I don't want that for you, Bryan. We cannot have 2 in the net in the next 2 to 3 years. It's not going to happen.
Don't need him. We don't need him to be a full-time backup next year.
Okay.
We got time. I mean, real quick diversion.
I think you just want Milwaukee, and if you want 5 years of them both being content to be the goalies in their respective spots.
No, I mean, again, just like Juuse Saros was, he would spend a lot of time in Milwaukee and then get called up, and the next year he'd get a few more games. That's what you do. But I mean, who has the most points for goaltenders in the NHL? Askarov, tied with 4. Who has the most penalty minutes by any goaltender? That's Yaroslav Askarov with 21 because of his little fight. He's only allowed 5 goals on 40 shootout attempts. 40 shootout attempts. I mean, that's ridiculous. And 91.3 save percentage. He's ridiculous. 24, 13, and 4, with their roster looking even more terrifying than Nashville's does, because we have all their guys now. So it's fun. Kamel debuted in the last 2 weeks. Forgot to mention that. He's been awesome. So
say he has 2 goals, doesn't he?
I believe so.
Man.
Kid's good.
Watch the Admirals, guys. Watch the Admirals.
There you go. Jeff, what can the good folks check out from you across all the various networks and your writing spots this week?
Let's see. I got Flame stuff coming out. Who I think are going to grab the last playoff spot. But that's a take. And Flames fans may not want to hear that, but I think
does anyone want that final spot? Does anyone actually want to get in there?
No one wants that final spot. Yeah, I don't think Winnipeg grabs it either. But yeah, so Flame stuff coming out. Just gonna keep churning stuff out about everything, especially as the season comes to an end. Yankee stuff, baseball's back, baby, and so I'm really pushing that stuff out too. I had a piece come out yesterday, if you're listening to this, about opening day, and kind of. Did you really? I didn't know if you read it or not, but yeah, it was one of my favorite pieces I've ever written. And yeah, I don't know. It's baseball's back. It's a great time of year. Hockey's coming to a close. Playoffs are about to happen. This is the best time to be a sports fan. And then yeah, maybe some stuff around the Forecheck soon. We'll have to see. Renegades of Puck may or may not show up.
You've got a jersey, so you got to make.
I do have a jersey, so yeah. But yeah, no, I'll be around. You'll see me.
Yeah.
There you go. Bryan, new site, Who Dis? What else can the good folks check out from you and the team on the Forecheck this week?
Just a ton of stuff. Lots of probably public stressing on Twitter about the site, getting it going. Almost all the SB Nation sites now have pushed and gone independent. It's been cool to see. There's a lot of stress, but yeah, we've got the game, so the push is going to be really important. So I'm gonna have a couple pieces that are actually almost ready to stick on the news site and publish it next week. So that's good. Probably on both topics I've talked about today with goaltending, things like that. Renegades a puck as always after every game, unless I forget, and I text Charlie like 11:30, being like, I went to bed. My bad. But yeah, they'll have that. It's been great. I'm going to try and step up like we did last year as the Predator season closes down. We'll probably switch into a lot of the Renegade stuff towards Milwaukee. So that'll be really fun for me to get up there. And then after that, I don't know, but it's gonna be fun. But we're almost there. 8 more games. What, 2.5 weeks left? I love hockey. I will very much enjoy being able to watch the playoffs as a fan with no professional responsibility attached to it.
It's been an exhausting year.
On
like everything. It's really been tiring.
So, yeah, it's been a banner year for Preds Twitter too. So
yeah.
But it's I can't wait. Thanks, Chase. As always, I'm sorry we missed last week, but we were all busy. I wanted to get you out in the mountains.
Dude, well, not even just that, I had to prep. Like, it was just so much going out of town for that long. Like, it was a lot. So I will say it was rough. Like, you made the joke in the group chat about like, are you gonna be able to do this? I think, and like, how are like just this time? Let me tell you, my wife was like, I can tell. Like on Tuesday afternoon, because I was like looking up YouTube stuff to clip, and I get anxious to not be productive and do these kind of things because I love doing these. I really do. It doesn't feel like work for me to be grinding away and doing all these different pods and cutting up stuff and just always learning and moving. And I'm just like, I was getting antsy. Like, I think
if you're not working, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's just it's just in me. Like, it is. But
I don't know if I can relate too much to that overwhelming sense of responsibility but that's just me, and that's the reason why you're doing this. Because I'm like, this is a lot of work for you, but I'm like, I enjoy doing this, but that's because you do all the hard part for this. Like, I love being on podcasts. I just hate having to do everything that happens after you.
People don't see the everything else, the chopping up, the editing, the social, the posting, the SEO, all kinds of stuff that you don't see after the fact, folks.
But please tell your wife that, like, me starting about 24 hours before, like, trying to get you to talking you out of recording last week so you could go on your vacation, like that. That's my belated wedding present to your wife.
Thanks, man. Well, our 6 month did just come up 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, almost exactly.
The math better be a lot faster, buddy.
I what?
The math got to be a lot faster.
Hold on. I know it was September 17th, but it was like 4, so it's exactly 2 weeks away. But it was on a Saturday and we're on a Friday, so I hesitated a little bit because I was like, wait,
no one's counting, Chase. You could have just said a number.
I know I should have.
Stats
I don't know better.
All right, well, there you go. Bryan, Jeff, thank you as always, and I will talk to y'all next week.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.